Conspiracy breed conspiracies, and conspiracists like me become obsessed, often blinded by the perceived truth until truth becomes relative, at which point truth ceases to be based upon facts. Perhaps Sandra in her time and Mad Marv in his had it right that the master was Kali Liao, and that Colonel Schmidt did manage to replace Richard Ion and Amanda Cameron with body doubles and spirit them out of the hegemony on the night that Stephen Amorous launched his coup. And perhaps not. Other fragments that may have made their way across history and into the light allude to the master being the real Thomas Merrick, not to be confused with yet another body double of the same name. Truth is, assuming you care to know the truth, is that we may never know he or she was, and that it no longer matters outside of our own private conspiracy. What does matter? What does matter is that most of history does not forget the mass death and destruction caused by the word of Blake, and most importantly, those rabid dogs hiding within its moniker, these 6th of June. So we are looking at yet another Interstellar Players entry, and it is the 6th of June. And I liked what I know of it personally from reading the novels, and I don't know of what they're played. I'm still figuring out the facts of how much they were involved in the coming out of the Jihad era and leading into the Dark Age, and how their participation in the Word of Blake. But they were a very important or very prominent faction within the Word of Blake that probably did more to drive Word of Blake's path than anything else in the faction, at least from my perspective or my understanding. So we have this section here, and we'll start with this entry here where it says, I love an article that starts with so-and-so disappeared without a trace. Makes for good reading sometimes, but is an annoying cliche. You think the villains would understand this and pay better attention. The 6th of June, who comes up with these names anyway? Sounds like it could be supremely evil sect of the Word of Blake's Toyama faction, or a way to conveniently tie up a few dozen loose ends that bothered somebody with an overactive imagination. Or this could simply be another example of ComStar's supposed perfect storehouse of humanity's history. A storehouse that, with the very recent release of veteran Hebris' study on House Steiner, has been shown to have gross inaccuracies and holes big enough to fly a mammoth dropship through. Not that my faith in Hebris' accuracy is much better, but he at least makes some sense of the self-proclaimed guardians of the knowledge of ComStar. Now, what makes this write-up all the more interesting is that after its publication, it was not picked up by the Holo News programs or any other respectable print publication. Not a single one. Only those like me who work in the dark and dark, dank places kept it going. Makes you wonder. Signed, Starling. So, 6th of June, Unraveling the Mysteries by Sandra Raines. Faction Reformation Historical Perspective, transcripts of a interview she gave with a former precentor, Power and Fanaticism. 6th of June took its name from the date of Myndo Waterly's death. Its members are far more radical in their beliefs than the average Blakeist. Those most familiar with the word of Blake believe Aziz ordered Waterly's body stolen soon after its interment in the ComStar's Holy Shroud at Blake Cemetery, secretly enshrining it somewhere on Gibson. Additional rumor is that Aziz then had the former premises body hermetically sealed in a glass Schlepper glass tomb. Supposedly, 6th of June members journeyed to Waterly's final resting place and reaffirmed their devotion to her memory as part of their final indoctrination. But the Word of Blake contained many factions by 3059. Only the 6th of June, part of the Tomoya faction, proved more resourceful and active than the other major players. The true believers are the counter-reformists. It became apparent during Operation Odysseus, the assault on Terra, Mordecai, as well a well-placed source of the mind in the Word of Blake, provided me with a recorded meeting between the 6th of June leadership. Present at this meeting were Demona Aziz, Cameron St. Jamais, and a host of others to discuss the conclusion of the Toyama faction, and by extension the 6th of June, from the upcoming operation against ComStar on Terra. They took a deliberate snub from Precentor William Blaine, nominal leader of the Word of Blake. The underlying tone of the discussion demonstrated they would go to any length necessary to improve their position, including removing Blaine. So, says during 3059, the Toyama faction funneled weapons and technology to the Marian hegemony. However, Cameron St. Jamais had his own agenda. According to Mordecai, St. Jamais made a contact with Kali Liao and leaked Aziz's plan, setting in motion Aziz's demise. Armed with this information arranged by her manipulation, Capellan Chancellor Sun-Tzu Liao secretly led a force against Aziz and her Toyamas on Detroit. Allegedly, the Sun-Tzu killed Demona Aziz while Naomi Centrella, heir to the magistrate at Canopus, watched. St. James, previously a constant presence at Aziz's side, had mysteriously disappeared before these events, leaving Aziz to face the Chancellor alone. According to Mordecai, St. James acted as he did because he viewed Aziz as too much of a loose cannon to be an effective leader. Aziz's death cleared the way for St. James and the 6th of June to lead the Toyamas to premise in the word of Blake. So, Machiavellian politics, plots, and free enterprise. So, in order for the 6th of June to expand its power base, leaders required more resources, personnel, and supporters. Having secured funding, they turned to efforts toward obtaining whatever their larger military required. Manpower they had, with a large pool of inhabitants to recruit from on Terra, despite an ongoing low-level rebellion there against Blakist rule. Presently, the Terra Liberation Front is leading the rebellion, is supposedly causing quite a stir for the Blakists. This could explain why St. James has returned to the periphery with a vengeance to and a word of Blake sphere of influence into major and minor periphery powers, including many pirate groups. 6th of June operatives have since allegedly staged raids against successor state manufacturers, diverted military shipments, and stuck supply depots to obtain needed material. But though this is only conjecture, that they allegedly recruited the rogue 5th FedCom RCT into their ranks soon after the end of the FedCom Civil War. At this point, in my own investigation, I literally stumbled across the information that caught all but ComStar by surprise, Project Phoenix. Right. So Master and his followers. All that stuff there. Most difficult part of any investigation is tracking down the leads of information I found. This is especially true concerning the Master. Various references as documents I obtained concerning the Master appear to hold this mysterious leader in reverence and fear. Supposedly, the loyalty to the Master runs so deep, members of the 6th of June have a new religious experience in following her commands, regarding her almost as some sort of goddess. Followers may willingly give their lives in suicidal bombings to prove their love and loyalty to the Master. Although many view Blakists in general as religious zealots, some members of the 6th are far more than that. Their willingness to die in wanton acts of terrorism and their fanatical loyalty to the Master separates them from the rest of the Blakists by an order of magnitude. In addition, history has shown that fanatics are far more capable of action and champion their beliefs. Right? We got HPT transmission. You know what I'm talking about, Row. Final thoughts and new revelations. Sadly, after seeing this letter, my contact vanished. I hope they went underground and escaped. However, no way to verify is that his letter all but confirmed Kali Liao as her master. The diary contains some shocking revelations. I was awed to read the words of a long-dead soldier, even more so because they came with the last commander of the Royal Black Watch. Colonel Schmidt's diary contradicts the events of December 27th, 2766. So in here, basically, is they're talking about this letter here. This letter left by Colonel Hanny Schmidt, the last commanding officer of the Royal Black Watch, 12 December 2766. And in it, she basically defines a way. She's her growing worry that Stephen Amherst's intentions are not good, and that her inability to get Richard Cameron or anybody else close to Cameron to really take Amherst as a real true threat. And so he manages to stage a conspiracy of her own to get a body double set up and replace Cameron's two children, Richard Ion Cameron and Amanda, and then spirit them out of the hegemony just on the same day that Amherst stages his coup and basically wipes out the Cameron family. And it implies that so descendants of House Cameron did exist and did survive and were whisked off into the Federated Sons, which explains why generations later, ComStar's had such a hard-on for the Sons and Al Steiner. So we got the game section, organization, 6th of June scenarios, so on and so forth. All right, it's always interesting because these sort of things is what, while big stompy robots dominate the field and run everything ragged, it's not the end all to beat all. So, some observations. And yeah, I take notes. Right? I don't always read my notes and stick to them sometimes, and sometimes my notes are handwritten and they're crap, but I do take an effort, right? So apparently body doubles, or the conspiracy supporting the use, runs far deeper than the mainstream histories would have us believe. Perhaps even I'm a body double, set here to further deceive you and to muddle the truth even now, centuries, decades and centuries later. Fact is, in the Intersphere politics, the use of body doubles have come up a number of times, quite a few more than you would think that they ought to, which means that they're much more prevalent than perhaps given credence to. Call them what you wish. Secret societies, brotherhoods, clubs, cabals, sororities, hidden and open orders, that of humanity's many obsessions, belonging to something allows the individual to believe that they are part of something bigger than themselves, that they truly matter in the great conspiracy that is life, is nearly all-consuming. More so since most of the, quote, individuals end up wittingly or unwittingly serving the ends of someone else. The whole point of this thing is that, we want to belong to something, and then because we do, we open ourselves up to being manipulated and used as a tool or for personal gain on somebody who's higher up the level in whatever group you want to belong to. So, a few personal thoughts on the idea that Kali Liao might have been the master. While it is true she was a leader, a goddess of sorts, for the insane thuggy cult, of which I will note there have been several goddesses and revivals of this cult over the decades, before and since Kali's death. Each time, once they make themselves known to their wider powers, they're quickly and forcibly treated like the foul infection they are, though I do suspect they probably lurk somewhere out there. But the facts are the facts. Truth, if one chooses to accept the truth. Kali, as talented as it thought she was, had her hands quite full of being the other thorn in her brother's arse. She was also undeniably insane. There are no records, fragments of records, or even a shred of evidence suggesting that she spent any time under the wing of Word of Blake or one of its many internal factions. Surely such would have been necessary for the Word of Blake to have followed any command she would have issued them and consider her the, quote, master. Meanwhile, also taken into account that as lore has progressed, and lore now stipulates and is quite firm that the real Thomas Merrick, who was a supplicant and diehard ComStar Blakist, was the real master. Meanwhile, let us return briefly and consider a moment when a shred of evidence has survived over the centuries alluding to the conspiracy that Amorous has failed to utterly exterminate the Cameron bloodline like history says he did. One would think that had Richard Cameron's children avoided death at the usurper's hands and were spirited away, that at some point over the centuries since someone would have surfaced and claiming to be their descendants, and in doing so would have been challenged, vetted, exposed as yet another body double or a false claim. Hell, one might as well say that Stephen Amorous, who surrendered to currency and eventually executed, might himself and very well have been a body double, allowing the real Stephen to escape, taking Richard Ion and Amanda Cameron with him, fleeing to some deep periphery holding where even now descendants of both bloodlines are plotting and scheming, awaiting just the right time to return and reclaim the title of First Lord of the Star League. History likes to repeat itself. Just as easily, there may be many among you who wish this to be truth. Yet there may still be, lurking out there among the inner sphere and the deep periphery, factions of the now defunct ComStar and Word of Break, and the houses of Stephen Amorous and the houses of Cameron, or perhaps some blending of the two, are biding their time until once again they surge to the forefront. But that, too, my friends, is indeed a wild conspiracy, and one that we will very well file as among the dead. So let us delve a bit deeper into the facts. Yeah, so we already did that because I covered that sort of stuff. So yeah, see, 6th of June. I really like this stuff because it gives such a deeper depth to, that's right, Frankie, you betcha, you tell him. Yes, it gives him a bigger, deeper depth into what is the inner sphere. It's not just about all the big stompy robots. That's one of the things that I agree with Red on his channel when he talks about what makes good novels and what makes bad novels when it comes to BattleTech. BattleTech, the battle scenes in so many of their battles or novels are just, I don't know, they're kind of lame. They're McDonald's. They're kind of carbon copy of other stuff. They're just going through the mechanic motions of saying this is how the mechs work and how they fire, and somehow they're trying to, I don't know, in my personal opinion, to replicate a video game version. When what the novels really bring to the table, really bring to the game, is the flavor, the story, the conspiracies, the wider world, the thing that makes those battle mechs so important and why they're such prominent, but also that they're only mere things in a much grander, much bigger tapestry, the world, a theater of the mind, if you wish. Anyway, till next time, this is Rick, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.